What is going on, everybody? This is Richard Barker, the incredible hypnotist. How are you all doing? Sorry for the very slight delay. Do me a favor, type in the chat a thumb up or yes if you can hear me and you can see me. Just do a yes if you can hear me, you can see me. I can see we've got Sarah in the house. Dinesh is here. And we are live. We are ready to get underway. And I just want to make sure my audio is good. I believe it is. And my camera is also good. So in a few moments, just before I introduce our special guest, Dr. William Horton, just want to let you know some of the things that have happened over the last couple of weeks. Obviously, we didn't have a live stream last week, and that was because in America it's Labor Day. And Labor Day is just an excuse to drink, go on a boat, party, I think, and do the things that Americans should be doing. And Ray Duffy says, you got this. And that's what I learned about America. Everything's a party. We've got loads of holidays and excuses for a holiday. And like when a hurricane's coming to Florida, there's a hunker down party and all this good stuff. But getting back to business, I'm going to bring on Will Horton in a minute, who is a master at NLP. But I want you to have your questions ready, because I've got a bunch of questions for Will too. I've hung out with him a few times in Vegas, familiar with his work, but I have a lot of questions I want to ask about NLP and addiction work and stuff like that. And Will is actually down in the same state, Venice, Florida. So we are neighbors and have the sort of same mindset when it comes to hypnosis. So get ready with your questions. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce to you right now Mr. Will Horton. You are live on the stream. How are you, sir?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm all right. You see, I didn't shave because of this, like water. We have something going on with the burst water pipes, and nobody's seen me with this thing going on. But do you think it makes me look sexy?
Oh yeah, you got that millennial beard thing going on.
Like some kind of like sex symbol? Is that what you
said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that NLP? Is that NLP that I made you say what you didn't say?
Yes.
All right. So, Will, you've been in the game. Let's call it a game, a craft, an art. Some people say science, for quite some time. And how did you get involved? How did you get into this? What was your start?
Well, when I first got into it, the first time I ever experienced like any kind of hypnosis, we'll back up a little bit before NLP, I was in high school and I read a book called Hypnosis for Change, and it had a little script you could read. And then, so I read it and I hypnotized a couple of people. It scared me to death, to be honest with you. I didn't do anything with it, except I did make some hypnosis, I'll date myself here, cassette tapes, right? And I listened to them and they helped, but I was an athlete in high school, didn't really think about it. It kind of went on the back burner. Fast forward about 14 years, and I had an addiction I couldn't overcome. Went through treatment, been in therapy, and nothing seemed to be working. And I stumbled across someone who did some hypnosis, and what I found out later was NLP. And then everything started to make sense. My life turned around. I drank away my military career, my acting career. And then when I got my life back on track, I went and back in the late 70s, early 80s, it was easier to find an NLP training than it was a hypnosis training.
Okay.
So I started studying NLP and just never really left. I became an alcohol and drug counselor, went back to school, got my doctorate in psychology, and did all that. But I've been doing it ever since. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. So I've seen the art, the science, morph over the years. I could say, I put it that way politely.
So for those that don't know what NLP is, what's kind of your definition of this? What do you?
Well, NLP, NLP is basically how you think, how your brain processes information, not the why. Sometimes psychology gets stuck in why. Mm-hmm. Why do you do this? Why do you do it? It brings in consciousness. Where NLP basically is structure or process. It's like what's your brain doing? And if you change some of the processes, to use the computer analogy, when you change the program, it flows differently. So the information flows differently. Good example I always give everybody real quick. This anybody can do as long as you're not driving. And if you're driving, you shouldn't be watching the video anyway. All right. Unless you're in parts of Florida where I think people don't pay attention when they drive anyway.
And it could improve the driving.
But, you know, if you think about somebody you really like, a buddy, a pal, a friend, somebody you like, not a lover, anything like that, just somebody, hey, I like hanging out with that guy or that girl. If you picture them in your mind, they'll take some kind of spatial arrangement. Maybe they're right in front, maybe to the left, but you'll have an image of them in your mind somewhat.
Yeah.
Great. And then, you know, you think those warm feelings about that person. Great. Now, if you set that aside, and now if you think about somebody you really don't like, you know, they're a pain in the butt, you just don't like them.
Yeah, I got a lot of those.
And so you bring them up, right? They're going to be in a different place. It's just a different space in your mind. But now if you take that person you dislike and try in vain to move them to that spot of the person you like, what does your brain say? Right? If you try to move them over, it'll like, sometimes the picture will snap back. You'll go, no, they don't deserve it. And that's just how your brain's processing. But I guarantee you, if we did a few little prep work and we took that person you dislike and we moved them to that space of the person you like and you kept them there, you would start looking for reasons to like that person. It's just, and you're not using consciousness, right? It's kind of like if you think of a food you like and a food you dislike, and you could do it with that. But if you take like somebody says, I hate broccoli, everyone in the room could go, that's stupid. Broccoli's healthy. Broccoli's this. It doesn't matter. Does not matter. If you don't like it, you don't like it. But if we change how you're thinking about it subconsciously, suddenly you'll have a different thought about broccoli or whatever it is that we're starting to change.
So you're saying, so what you're saying is, you know, by the language you're suggesting, and just stop me if I'm incorrect, by the language you're suggesting, you can influence the emotional attachment to the words. Is that what you're saying? Or
yes. And then it changes how you think about it. And then when it's really working elegantly, when you see somebody good at it, then they'll justify it with their conscious mind. You know, it's kind of like, here's one a lot of men can relate to. Have you ever bought a car because you just liked the car? Mm-hmm. And then afterwards you found justification of why you bought that car. Oh, it was Motor Trend Car of the Year. I got a good deal, you know, but underneath it, you just liked the car.
Yeah.
Right? And then your brain kicks in and will justify it. So we do that constantly. And so what NLP does is bypass the critical factors of the mind with process. Hypnosis bypasses the critical factors of the mind with relaxation. They both do the same thing, but they're kind of going at it from two different ways, if you catch my drift.
Yeah. So breaking this down, so hypnosis bypasses our conscious thinking, right? Our conscious mind, critical mind, by relaxation. And I think you just said NLP bypasses your critical mind. And what was the other bit? I missed that bit.
Using the process.
By using the process. By using words and the suggestions, right?
Right.
So imagine, you know, those people that are watching this right now, they detest exercise. They hate it. They just hate exercising. They want to lose a bit of weight, look a bit sexier in the club, you know, but they hate exercising. So what would you say to that kind of person using NLP? I'm just curious.
Well, the first thing I would do is like to get in rapport, you know, you'd say, well, you know, that's very common. And in research, if you will, for most people, exercise is a lose-lose situation.
Yeah.
Right. And what I mean by that is, you know, if you were not athletic in school, you could be man or woman, that's irrelevant. If you were not athletic, especially like that 6th to 9th grade, right? So you're the last one chosen for the, you know, sports teams here, you know, basketball, that, in your case, soccer, whatever, right? But if you're the last one chosen and you're first one hit in the face with a dodgeball, back when they used to let us torture each other, you started to hate sports, but it transferred into hating exercise. And intellectually, we know sports and exercise are not the same thing. It becomes equated in our mind because then you hate a gym class. Therefore, I hate exercise. You never want to exercise. right? So that's one lose. But the other lose, if you were athletic in school and you played sports, football, baseball, basketball, whatever it happened to be, soccer, in sports, exercise is punishment. You tried to get through a whole, in my case, football practice or wrestling, well, wrestling was different, but football practice or baseball practice without screwing up so you didn't have to run laps. So then you equated that. So then the minute you quit playing sports, and usually it's older adults that say, I hate exercise, well, they're not playing sports anymore. So they have no reason to exercise, even if they were athletic in high school. It's why you see guys, here in the States, they were like Mr. Football, Mr. Basketball. They're buff. Maybe they even go to college, they're 23. They got the six pack. You see them at 30 and you're like, my God, what happened to you, brother?
Yeah.
Or they were in the, so it's a lose-lose. And it's just how your brain is processing information. Here's a quick story. I was at the health, and you're a hypnotist. You do this all the time.
Yeah.
You're an expert, right? We're always trying to motivate people to exercise. So I was doing some things. But one day, I like to exercise. I'm weird. But I'm standing in the health club. I'm like doing whatever I'm doing with dumbbells. And this guy walks by, a personal trainer with this overweight lady. And he's trying to motivate her to exercise. You could imagine, right? You've seen that. Yeah, do this. And I remember she goes, I can't wait to get in shape so I can quit working out.
That's funny.
And I laughed, but I've heard that before, right? People come to us as hypnotists and helpers. Hey, I want to, change my diet till I lose weight so I can go back and eat the crap I used to eat, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, he's trying to motivate her to exercise. And he's doing the typical, makes you, look better, feel better. Everyone knows that, right? But there was this couple next to me working out. They were older, probably in their late 60s. But the woman looked fabulous. And the guy, six-pack, he was ripped. And I say in shape. Not in shape for his age.
Yeah.
He was in shape. And so was the lady. And the trainer asked them, about exercise. And I forget what the guy said. I don't remember what he said. But the woman said something that just grabbed my attention. She goes, you know what it really is? I don't understand how people don't exercise. Because for me, it's like showering or brushing your teeth. How do you not shower for a week at a time? How do you not brush your teeth for a week at a time? And I'm standing there next to her doing my exercise. And I went, excuse my language, damn it. That's how I think in my head. If I don't exercise, yeah, I'll skip a day here, skip a day there. We go to Vegas. Schedules are off. But I still, after 2-3 days, I feel like crap. Right? It's kind of like here in Florida. If you've been down here when we have a hurricane, wipes out power, you might skip a couple of days because you just don't have power. You can't take a shower. But if you think that way in your head, how do I not exercise? I guarantee you're going to find a way to exercise. You do a lot on cruise ships. And I love when I had my practice going and I had weight loss people and they go, well, I know I'm going to gain some weight because I'm going on a cruise. And everyone knows you can't exercise on a cruise ship. And I'm like, they have these things called gyms.
They have big gyms.
Yes, nobody goes,
Yeah.
but again, if you're the type to exercise, you will exercise. So that's the kind of thing, so we have to figure out like what's going on in this person's head that likes to exercise versus that person that doesn't like it. If you change the process, that person will begin to want to exercise.
There's some good information. Sarah said good info. Joni Knightie says hi. She's here in the house.
Hey.
Good to see you, Joni. So let's get right back to basics. So obviously you're very successful. You have lots of clients. You've been doing this a long time. And would you say, I know I get this asked to me all the time on my channel, and I'm interested to see what you say. Would you say that most of your hypnosis is done without hypnosis, like just using words, like using the NLP?
To be honest with you, yeah, the really cool change work happens that way. And then at the end of a session, I'll do a quick like relaxation and some reinforcement. Because especially if they're not in our world, I get a lot of hypnotists, NLPers, and therapists calling me. So then that's a little different. But for the general public, they come in, they expect to be hypnotized, right? So they don't understand that the last 30 minutes I've been moving stuff in their heads, they're thinking different. And then I can say, okay, now take a deep breath, I'm a big Dave Ellman induction fan. So I do a Dave Ellman, do some ego support or ego strengthening, and then wrap it up, and it kind of bookends it. So yeah, I'd say a lot of the work happens with the setup and the language, and the hypnosis in my case is the back end. Some other people I know, they'll put you in trance, then do the NLP.
Yeah. I think I do the same as you, because what I do is people come in with all these expectations, or like I just had a client today, actually, just before this live stream. It's why I was just a couple of minutes late here. And the first thing she said was, and literally, she never said this anywhere through the intake process, or she came in and basically said, I saw a hypnotherapist before and it didn't work. So since you're a hypnotist, I think this might work. So she had this like preconceived idea that there's a difference between a hypnotist and a hypnotherapist. And a lot of people see sort of stage work and street hypnosis and kind of think it's different. So what I like to do with clients like this, oh, well, you saw a hypnotherapist and it didn't work. Well, what happened? And they kind of describe hypnosis really in its truest form, but it didn't work. But then I saw you do something and it worked. So I like to put NLP on the front with convincers. So I said, oh, okay, well, are you left or right-handed? And I just start immediately, and I'll do a couple of, for want of a better description, parlor tricks that you and I know are suggestibility tests, and I do a few of those, and all of a sudden in their mind, they're absolutely convinced in the process. So then, by the power of words and suggestion, of course it's going to work. And then I go and do Elman as well, and then reinforce it at the end. And I learned this from magicians. I recap what just happened, and magicians are very good at this. And they, so you're telling me you came here to see me at St. Pete Beach, Florida, and you decided above all else that you wanted to make effective changes in your life, and you're sick and tired of being sick and tired. So you came here, you chose a Monday of all things, and you came and decided on Monday, this is my new changes and new outlook on, you decided, and I walk them through it. So then you decided to easily, without any effort, go into a level of trance for over an hour, and came out of it the other side, and you feel wonderful, don't you? Yeah, I feel great. And you're ready to take back control of your life and do some homework, aren't you? Yes. You see, I like doing that, which in a sense is a reinforcer, and more sort of embedding the suggestions I already gave. And I've seen other styles where it's just hypnosis, right from the front. And I'm wondering how powerful that is, because I've listened to the way you speak and your NLP language, and it's kind of almost secretive, but it isn't. You're saying it in the cold light of day, but people don't catch it, do they? They don't understand what you're saying, but you're saying it. So how do you get away with that? How do you say things?
Well, like you say, we can learn a lot from magicians. A lot of the old original hypnotists were magicians, the Orman McGills and Gil Boyne, and all these people were at one time magicians. Dwight Damon from the National Guild. The list goes on and on. And one of the things, they, like you said, you tell them what you're going to do, you do it, and then you tell them what you just did.
Yeah.
Right? And then people, and you never tried to hide the trick.
Right.
A true magician never really tries. It should seem effortless. And, to me, when I see people kind of slaughter waking hypnosis and all that, because they're trying to be slick.
Yeah.
They're trying to hide something, right? And so you just put it in the light of day. And most people won't notice, because most of us are in our own heads anyway.
Yeah.
They're not really paying attention, right? And so you're just actually using how their brain works. And because you're constantly in the first level, you're bouncing in and out of split consciousness, right? It's just how your brain works. This is the neurology of it, right? I've been taking all neurology classes, but it's like, people think they can multitask. That's a fallacy. That's impossible. You switch between tasks quickly.
Yes.
When you're younger, you can switch quicker. When you're older, there's a lag time, but you're switching back and forth.
Yeah.
But in split consciousness, you're thinking about one thing, so you're focused over here, and yet your subconscious mind is still processing information, right? We know that, you and I, but it's why advertising works. A truly good advertisement, especially on television, they bypass the critical factors by the best example here in the States. I know you're when people come from Europe or Asia here, they're amused and appalled at our drug commercials, right?
Yeah.
Because they'll be saying like it shows all these sad people, then they take this drug and they're happy, right? And that's all visual, right? And then this is very cool because it's hypnosis in 101. So it shows all this, oh, you're not depressed anymore. You've taken whatever that drug is. Great. And then when they start the list of side effects, liver failure, cancer, death, runny stool, all this other stuff, explosive diarrhea, when they're saying that, they're putting up pretty pictures, right? That does, a pretty picture of this woman smiling, riding a bike doesn't go with explosive diarrhea.
Right.
And yet you're thinking of the picture and you've kind of screened out this other thing, right? So that's Hypnosis 101. So when people really learn NLP and hypnosis and they begin to take it to the next level, which is usually conversationally, it's just, I always tell people, don't ever be subtle about anything that you do, from rapport skills to any of the techniques I teach. Be blatant.
Yeah.
Because, in our day, for all the people listening here, probably still the best known person that's in any kind of change work in the world is Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
Right. And yet, I do know in America, less than 1% even know who he is.
Really? In America?
Yep.
Wow.
Because he hasn't done an infomercial in years.
Okay.
Right.
Amazing.
Larry King's gone. Oprah's gone. He hasn't been on TV like we would think.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, they'll go, oh yeah, there's that guy from, yeah, if they're older, they'll sort of remember him. If you're a millennial, you'll go, that's the guy from Shallow Hal.
Yeah.
Right. And so if that's the best known, we think everyone knows this stuff. The other thing I tell everybody when you're learning this is don't fall into that paradox of thinking just because you know it, everybody knows it.
Right.
And so that makes you try to be slick and all that other, and then it comes across as condescending and manipulative.
And that's really, really good advice, because I have to remember, when I teach hypnosis, and I know you do too, I always tell people when they're brand new, just write down what you think about this, what you think it to be, what you believe before you've had any knowledge other than obviously YouTube, but what you believe this to be, and write it down, because that's what others believe it to be. So when they come into your office, whether they're a client or they're a member of a stage, I like to sort of unwrap what's about to happen. And I'm totally on board with what you just said, is that I tell them the process, what's going to happen, then it's going to happen, and then it happens, and I tell people, there's no magical, mystical thing that I'm going to do. Same with magic. It's just practice and illusion. But actually, it's also poetry of the mouth, sleight of mouth. So hypnosis is nothing more than practicing something that is a technique that I believe that works, that we all possess, that we choose to accept or decline it. And I like to kind of tell them that really there's nothing sneaky going on, which is kind of interesting, because it leads me to the next question I have for you. Since you're an NLPer, which for those that don't know, neuro-linguistical programming, what do you think about this big movement with this covert, they have this covert hypnosis language course? What's all that about?
It's amusing because I've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah.
I'm teaching it, and they turned it into something it's not, is basically what it is, right? They talk about Ericksonian hypnosis, right? And there's a couple people out there teaching like, I've taken the mantle of Ericksonian hypnosis. I'm the next. And my first response is, unless you're a doctor, Erickson would not have talked to you.
Right.
That's that. Up till the day he died, he did not train non-licensed professionals, right? And even, by the way, I'll break that myth. The whole idea that Bandler and Grinder studied for months or years with Erickson is a lie.
Huh.
Right? Because he only trained medical doctors.
Yeah.
It's only from 75 on, I think, he started training psychologists, right? So he wouldn't train a lay person, but because he understood the power of it, right? But yeah, it works, and yet people make it more complicated than what it is. Anyone can take a simple idea and make it very complicated. But the trick is to take complicated ideas and make them simple. But unfortunately, our field is full of people who want to act like they're smart by proving you don't know what you're doing.
Right.
Right. And yet it's very simple, because how your brain works is very good. I mean, you could create a time loop in people's heads. People go, oh, how that must be very difficult. No, as you think back to what you were doing when this pandemic first started, Richard, and you had all those, seminars and workshops and stage shows set up. You could look back and think about how good it made you feel. And you can realize right now you're kind of stuck in the middle, but soon you'll be able to look back on this and think, my God, I'm glad I got out of it. So really, if you just stay with that, man, I'm glad this is out and I'm beginning to get my life back on track, you could forget about that other stuff. That's a time loop, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't hard. It's just, that's how your brain works, And if you just say the words and then you access some of the feelings, because you and I and everybody listening can think about what they were doing in February, March, how your year was planning. Oh, it's going to be great. And then, everything blew up and we're kind of stuck in a time warp right now, right? The actual clinical term is dyschronometria, if you want the clinical term, where we're losing time markers.
Yeah.
But it seems to be ending, by the way, right? But if you use that, that's how your brain works. Now you create that time loop, and then you could put things in there if you want. So that, to me, it's very simple,
I find it fairly straightforward because it's just language, and it's like you said, it's having some deliberateness. People are so wishy-washy it's funny, suggestions. If you make a direct suggestion, like if you are watching this right now on YouTube and you have not yet clicked the subscribe button, do it right now and then hit the alarm bell to get notifications. That's a direct suggestion and it's a direct ask. But if you don't ask for it, you can't expect to get it. So therefore, you have to ask for it. And then what I've learned with NLP is the more deliberate you are, the more successful it is. Right?
Oh, yeah. And just put it out there. Right? And it's fascinating to me, again, how people try to make it something that it's not. It's very simple. It's felt straightforward, And will it work all the time? No, nothing works all the time.
So let me ask you this, because I know some people, I'm going to ask the question. And by the way, in the comments, if you have a question, please write your question in there. It's not often we can get Will's time. He's very busy and full of knowledge. So if you're learning or studying hypnosis or NLP and you have a question, no matter how wild you might think it is, it probably isn't. So ask the question. I'll pop it up on the screen and I'll tell you what the question is. But one thing I get asked too is, so is hypnosis NLP or is NLP hypnosis?
Yes.
Correct.
I tell people, one thing drives me crazy is I'll be at a conference or something, whether it's hypnosis or psych, because I'm a psychologist, I have to go to psych conferences. And people go, oh, NLP is a great tool. Well, you've missed the boat, right? Because NLP is not people confuse the techniques with what NLP is. NLP is a structure. It's a toolbox. Mm-hmm. If you really understand NLP and how you gather information and all the basics of it, right, it becomes a toolbox. And then within that toolbox, you could do suggestion hypnosis, you could do regression hypnosis, you could do cognitive behavioral therapy, you could do you could do EFT within the framework. So I tell people NLP becomes the toolbox that hypnosis fits in, not the other way around. Because every once in a while people go, well, how do you know when to do hypnosis and when to do NLP? And I'm like, well, to me, you can't separate the two.
Right.
You're confusing a specific maybe NLP technique, which NLP got famous for, the phobia technique, the new behavior generator, the swish pattern, several patterns that just got people's attention. But those are just techniques that fit in what we were talking about, gathering the information, figuring out how the people are thinking, and then deciding on what technique you're going to do.
So have you ever sort of used NLP for any form of entertainment or any level of outside of a clinical setting? Do you do this on a daily basis or do you practice it?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I remember back in the 90s, a whole bunch of the stage hypnotists back then were starting to tweak up their pre-talks with NLP. Of course, when you study the old masters like the Orman McGills, when you see he was doing it before people knew what they were doing. You know, as you find yourself wanting to come up here, I remember him saying that. It's like, who taught this guy? Well, he was doing hypnosis in the 1930s. He just found out what worked, you know. So as you find yourself wanting to come up here, there's some rules before you do come. I mean, he's setting all this. Yeah. You know, we could go back now with NLP and look, oh, here's what he's doing. But a lot of the people that got trained in stage hypnosis that didn't learn the language part of it, they were so focused on doing the induction and then the bits or the skits, you know, they didn't get it's all in the setup, you know. And I didn't do that. Well, yeah, I did a few hundred stage shows over the year. And I can tell you, every time I screwed up, it was in the pre-talk.
Yeah.
You know, and when I followed the little formula, it would work fine.
I think the pre-talk's the most successful and the most important part of a hypnosis show, and I attribute that to NLP. I mean, I think that by what you say at the front of a show determines the success and the outcome of the show, and a lot of stage hypnotists fall into the trap of trying to get to the induction and the funny bits so quickly that they don't have a good show, and the reason for that is because the front end of the show was rushed. And I see people doing that a lot because they just want to get to the comedy and just get to the laughs. But whereas a stand-up comedian can stand up and immediately deliver something funny, there's still, you know, with hypnosis, you still need that sort of introduction, you know, to the show, the pre-talk, the expectations, the right volunteers. You know, there is a process before you get to the funny bits. And I spend quite a bit of time on the front of the show, even though like on a cruise ship, you've only got 45 minutes to do a show. I mean, it's fast, but I know that I'll get more success that way and more willingness and more volunteers and a better audience because I teach them what to do, you know, and what I want and how I want it so that they come up on the stage, you know, faster and the audience responds quicker and everything else. So I think it's hugely important, you know, that NLP, you know, should be taught to almost every stage hypnotist. So if they have never taken a course in NLP, they really should, because it will change the pre-talk, and it seems to be the thing they struggle with the most. In my experience, they struggle with a pre-talk. They don't know what to say or how to say.
Right. Well, that, and also too, when you do stage shows at the end, people always come up, hey, can you help me with this or that real quick?
Yeah.
If you have a couple of fast techniques, a swish pattern, this, you could go, and you know, you don't get bogged down. And you know who did something brilliant with that, like setting I saw back in the early 90s. Gosh, I'm old. But I was in Vegas, and Marshall Silver was when he was headlining at was it the Golden Nugget or Caesar's Palace, wherever he was headlining. But one of the things he did, and because he was very good at the NLP, is he had people wait to get into the room. And as they're getting in the room, they had the TVs up they were just showing his show.
Yeah.
Basically, right? Then you got to the auditorium, and I was in there. I got comp, so because I'm cheap too. But I'm sitting there, and then on the big screen, it's parts of his stage show with the commands going, "Soon you will be doing this." You know, by buying the ticket, you agree you may be hypnotized. I mean, it was brilliant framing of the show.
Yeah.
And yet, then when he came out, he did the standard pre-talk. Then he did his fancy stuff. Yeah. You know, and it was a really good stage show.
I've always liked Marshall Silver in the 90s and everything he's done, and I've modeled some of what I do on Marshall, and I agree. You know, when I have the luxury of having a motorhome and I'm doing a bunch of fairgrounds, I will have the last show replaying on the big screen, you know, somewhere, whether it's by the side of the motorhome or on a stand, or I do the same thing. And I think I must have got that from Marshall, or it's just good advertising to advertise what they're about to get. And I do on my cruise ship shows, because I have the big LCD screen. I mean, it's huge, that some of those stages. I show a 2-minute sizzle reel of celebrities getting hypnotized and everything else, and then there's a voiceover, get ready to be hypnotized. So it's kind of a good use of words, right? It's a good use of NLP to predict future behavior when they get up on stage, right? I mean, it's
oh yeah. And when I would train, I was one of the few when I would be training, like people just want to become hypnotists, weight loss, stop smoking, the typical stuff. Some people say, because then they'd come to my office, especially when I had my big office in Fort Myers, and I'd have, a video running, usually of all kinds of stuff. But they would be shocked sometimes. They come in and there's a stage show on, and they're like, "I'm surprised you're showing a stage show." And it wasn't usually mine; it was one of my friends, a stage show. And I'm like, "Why? If you're sitting there and Richard, you want to stop smoking, and you just watched 15 minutes of a stage show, And my buddy Rich got these people literally, dancing, doing this stuff on stage. To me, that's a heck of a convincer that, if you could do that, maybe you could help me stop smoking.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know. And some people go the opposite. I'm like, no, I think it's good for us. I remember a real quick story. When I was in Maryville, Indiana, there was a comedy club in the resort right next to where my office was. And there was this hypnotist that would come in, play the comedy club. And whenever he was in town, he always did X-rated shows too. It didn't bother me. But whenever he was in town, my phone would ring off the hook, right? So he would stay at the resort. So I'd go over there, and finally I found the guy. I bought him lunch. We're sitting there talking, and he comped me into a show. And what he did that was brilliant, but talk about exploding my clinic. I'm sitting in there, and he took some of my business cards, and after his show, so it was a really funny show. He goes, "Hey," and I want everybody to turn and say, "Hey, there's Dr. Will Horton.
Nice."
He acted like I was his student, right?
Yeah.
But I put my ego aside. I waved. He goes, "So if you have any questions, or you want to do some follow-ups, because I'm only in town doing stage shows, call him." I swear to God, I got 30 clients out of that guy.
There's nothing wrong with working together like that. It's a positive. If somebody is in your show, I did it when I was in St. Louis. If a local hypnotist is in one of your shows and you cannot pick up the clinical clients and everything else, or you don't want to or don't know how to, why wouldn't you pass them on to a local guy like that?
Yeah, and there was back in the late 90s, there was a couple guys that would do the dog and pony stop smoking seminars, at the hotels.
Yeah.
And I would tell people, "Hey, stop in, say hi, buy him a cup of coffee." And they're like, you'd be surprised. There was a couple guy, he's passed now. His name was Don Call. He would hand out your business cards, even at his seminar. He didn't care because, he's there doing one thing and people want more.
Moving on anyway. All right.
Yeah. His guarantee was good till his parking lights were out of the driveway.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the comments, and I don't know if it's not refreshing or I can't see them, or you guys are exceptionally quiet tonight or today, or you have so much information, Will, they don't know what to say. Good information, that is, of course. I got Jackie saying, "Yo, I made it." Laugh out loud. I guess that's millennial speak for "I'm here." That's good. Thanks, Jackie. I'm glad you made it. You're probably late. Don't be late again. Dinesh normally is full of comments, and he's kind of stunned into silence. Rick Rozak is here. Sarah is here. We've got a bunch of people online. So listen, type your questions in. If you have any questions about hypnosis, language, NLP, and please, questions to Dr. William Horton. This guy is a font of all knowledge. He's been doing this a long time. You've probably forgotten more than I actually know, to be perfectly honest. You've got lots of knowledge deep down there in your head. But I do have a question for you. So what is you said the swoosh?
Swish pattern?
Yeah, what's that? And you even did that noise.
Yeah, whoosh, yeah, swish. The swish pattern is based on how your brain works. It moves toward I don't want to say a positive. It'll move toward pleasure. Generally, your brain wants to move toward pleasure, right? So if you've got an associated thing that you want to get rid of, and I'll use smoking as an example. So you usually have a visual cue, right? Like, I don't smoke, so I don't have a cigarette, but like you'd see the cigarette, maybe there's the pack of Marlboro right here, right? Maybe a cup of coffee over to the corner. That's my visual cue. It's time to smoke. But I don't want to smoke anymore, right? So this is part of my visual cue. So if I have that, and then I can ask the person, so can you picture yourself the way you really want to be, like the cover of a book, or you're giving a talk, or you're playing with your grandkids in 30 years, something like that. So you picture that. Can you picture that? Yes. Would that you smoke? And they'd say, no, that I would have quit long ago. Great. Well, those two pictures can't go together, right? They don't work in your mind. So then what you do is you make that picture bright and colorful, make it huge. And so then what you do is you tell that person, bring up this, like the Q picture of the cigarette, right? And I'll use the new one because when I learned this, we use shutter of a camera, but any millennial listening probably doesn't know what the shutter of a camera is. So we'll use a computer, right? So if I have the Q, like there's the cigarette, maybe the pack of Marlboro, I want to quit, or Budweiser there, whatever my Q is, right? Great. And so then what I could do is imagine a dot, like a little, icon, and then you double click, and, so you can imagine them double clicking, that picture just disappears.
Yeah.
And then all you see is the 10-foot picture of the you that would never smoke. And if you repeat that process several times, usually 3 to 6, what begins to happen, you try to bring up the picture of the cigarette, and instantly it'll bring up the big picture of you that doesn't smoke. And so it's pulling you toward a better future, which is what it will do, right? And you can reinforce it. So that's the swish pattern. That one Richard Bandler created, I think, in about 76.
Yeah, see, I love that. So you're basically creating two scenes almost in their mind.
Yeah, and people can like move pictures like
that.
And they started calling it the swish pattern because people would go, like we'll just whoosh the pictures, just whoosh the pictures. If they're old enough to remember the shot. Oh, go ahead.
Are they doing that without thinking? Is it like a conscious thought to do that?
Yeah, when you first do it, it's like anything.
Yeah.
You say, okay, picture the cue, right? Now double click, whoosh, it disappears.
Love it.
And then if they're old enough to know what a shutter of a camera is,
yeah.
So you're looking at that, and then the shutter opens up, and there's the 10-foot picture of you that would never smoke, whoosh, right?
Yeah.
And then you just repeat that 3 or 4 times, and your brain will start making that connection quickly because your brain is fast. Your consciousness is slow.
Can that work with weight loss then? Can you apply that to addiction, right? Weight loss and
especially and I usually stress to people, if the more specific the cue, the easier it is. So if it's a specific cue, now people go sweets. Well, is it like cookies, cakes, candies? I mean, there's milk. But if it's specific, one of my a friend, Dan LaRosa, big stage hypnotist, right?
Yeah.
He was taking my class in the mid '90s, and he had this tendency, and you can relate to this as a stage hypnotist. He'd finish a show. It's 10:30 at night. He's in some small town. There's no place to eat, right?
Been there.
So he'd go to the vending machine and get a Diet Coke and 2 Snickers. Right.
Yeah.
And so he wanted to I remember it was Snickers. Right. And so we did this with Snickers, and it worked. And it's like he'll say now it's 25 years later and he still doesn't eat Snickers. All right.
Yeah. All right. We've got some questions. Will, here we go. Jackie says, what is your favorite hypnosis to do? Like, what if you had a favorite? I get for you, isn't it? Yeah. What is is it to teach it? Is it to, do you bring in clients into your office? What is your favorite hypnosis?
Well, for many, many years, it was honestly weight loss, right? And people would make fun of weight loss, because they act like it's not as serious. But if you get someone that's been overweight their whole lives, and then they lose weight, it's transformative. And then, of course, because I have a personal attached to it, was addictions.
Yeah.
But lately, I guess the thing I really like doing is performance enhancement for like actors, singers, dancers, because that's my other profession. So I have a tie to that. And usually, and athletes, right? Actors and athletes, because they're motivated.
Yes.
I used to say back in my clinic, the difference was a lot of people come in and you do a session on them. Remember, you used to give them a cassette tape, say, here, listen to this week. They come back the next week. Did you listen to it? Oh, I didn't have time, right? But you talk to an athlete, he go, can I get another one? I wore that one out.
I
Right?
worked with a golfer once who panically called me at 3 a.m. because he'd lost his MP3, or sorry, he'd changed his iPod, iPod, and it was on sitting on there, and he had to have it before a tournament.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I love working with actors and athletes.
So it's good. It's good because a lot of people are watching this right now. They want to lose a few pounds and things like that. And it's interesting that you love doing it and you've seen big success with it. And you can see the results by the reduction in body weight, right? I mean, it's something you can physically see, which gives, I think, hypnosis more validity that it obviously it works because I hate to do the before and after, but it does work. And you can actually really tangibly see a change. Whereas addiction, not so much, because they go away back to their own life, and you don't know in secret always.
Oh yeah,
what they're doing.
Yeah, and even like general psychology when they're doing like just psychotherapy and it's about feeling better.
Yeah,
that's nebulous. But either you lose weight or you don't. You stop smoking or you don't. It's measurable.
Love it. So Sarah says, what is your favorite place you have been to do hypnosis?
Probably the most eye-opening I've ever done was the first time I went to India. Uh-huh. I got to go to India to do an NLP. And I assumed everyone in India was really into like hypnosis because they all meditated and all this other stuff. And I got there and I found out, no, not at all, right? In fact, if you go to an ashram in India, they're probably run by Brits or Americans.
Yeah.
So it was kind of interesting to do it there.
So did you find it harder or probably harder then, did you? Harder than expected?
No, it was actually just like here. It's like
normal.
They didn't really, I assumed they knew what it was. I found it, and then when I found out they didn't really know, it just went back to the basics. Again, when I first started, I started speaking like, oh, you all know what it's like to meditate and do this. No.
You know what's funny is I went to India a couple of times, and the first time I went to a regular church, like Church of England. So I'm thinking in my head, temples and, Hindu and everything else. And here I am going to this church. That was my interpreter took me to this church for an Indian experience. And we're sitting in there and like everything's Church of England almost. And like we're singing, like the Lord's Prayer and everything else. I'm like, this isn't how I imagined it to be. I thought it would be all like Hindus. But of course it's just perception and imagination. But of course I had the same sort of thing. What I expected it to be was just totally not what I expected. We have a question from Corey. I'm going to read this out. He says, I'm newly trained in clinical hypnosis within a year. Would you say it would be best for me to get trained in NLP or get the clinical hypnosis down first before getting trained in NLP? That's a really good question.
I would take the NLP as quick as I could.
Yeah, me too.
Because it'll help with the clinical side. It'll have you look at it slightly differently.
Yeah. I think the language, like I took NLP first, actually. I don't know if you know any of my story, but I took it by total accident as a police officer. I didn't even know I was taking it. I never asked for it, didn't want it, and we went on this NLP class. It was called actually Cognitive Interview Hypnosis Skills, but then the instructor said the only reason it's called that is because you're all a bunch of cops. It's actually NLP, and proceeded to teach NLP. And I'm glad I learned it because I think I use NLP more than I use, standard hypnotic inductions and things like that. I use the language every day, whereas I don't use hypnosis every day. And I think that's the difference. And I like what you said about it's like the toolbox and the frame for hypnosis, because I think you have to have language and pattern down and know your intent by using words to then effectively implement the hypnotic trance. I'm not sure if you agree with that or.
No, yeah. It's the frame. It's the toolbox.
Dovra, talking about India, says, hi, I'm back. Dovra has been, I can't remember where you're from. I know it's in India somewhere. I think you're from Not Delhi. I'm not sure, but type in the comments. We do have a lot of followers from India. This time zone is kind to India, I think. The 2 p.m. And I know a lot of people study hypnosis in India. It's a good thing. The health and wellness is all good stuff around the world. Steve B says, Dr. Horton, are there any fundamental differences between NLP and Ericksonian / indirect hypnosis? It's a pretty good question, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a good question. Actually, well, NLP is usually much more in the technique side is very step oriented. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Wherein usually Ericksonian, it's more free flowing, but you can't free flow till you know the steps.
Yeah.
To use a martial arts analogy, you can't really do a spinning back kick till you know how to do a front kick, a side kick, and a back kick. Then we can put it together and teach a spinning back kick. So you got to learn the steps. And kind of going back to what you said about the Ericksonian and the waking hypnosis, one of the mistakes people make is they try to jump in at that level rather than like take classical hypnosis, take classical NLP. Then it's easy to learn the waking hypnosis. So because you already understand the format.
What do you mean by classical? So if somebody like Dovra here is saying, how do I learn hypnosis? Can I learn without taking a course? Can I learn online? Can I learn hypnotherapy without a course? Dovra's from India. He's saying here. So what in your mind is learning classical hypnosis and then classical?
Well, classical is induction based hypnosis.
Yeah.
Whether you use progressive or Ericksonian or confusion. But once you understand those,
you can,
and then it's like once you understand the confusion induction, that's one of the basics of Ericksonian.
Yeah.
Because that reminds me of a story, and then you go off in a different direction.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
very cool. My dog's being funny today, by the way. She's running around, going up and down the stairs, grabbing toys. This is live, so if you can hear this pitter-patter going on, she's not actually sleeping behind me like she normally does. She's being a bit crazy today. So Lanice Boom Saunders says, what is the difference between hypnosis and subliminal message recordings?
Oh, well, subliminal message recordings are where they take the message and put it just underneath the conscious awareness, right? That's the way to look at it. I do know some of the research, what's kind of interesting when people go, what's the research say on do subliminals work? Well, it depends on who funded the study.
Yeah, like everything. Come here.
Yeah, but honestly, I do know that what they call slight subliminals, or where you could barely hear, but you could hear the, whatever the suggestion is, those seem to have a greater efficacy than the ones that say, there's 10 million subliminal messages buried into you can't even hear them. And then I remember for a while, I was always amused with this, that somebody say, and you can't duplicate this. You can't burn a copy.
Oh, boy.
Right? Because you'll lose the subliminal.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't claim to be an electrical recording engineer.
Yeah.
But if I can't duplicate it, that means your machine can't play it.
Do you remember the days when if you played a 33 vinyl backwards, I think it was like Black Sabbath or someone, you got this message from the devil or whatever. I don't know if that's any truth to it or anything that was hidden in those albums, but I remember people believing that. Play a record backwards, you're going to get this message about, I don't know, something satanic or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, but subliminals work, especially if you can kind of hear them, so you know what the suggestion is, and you play them in the background while you do other things.
Yeah.
Because I'll be honest, I use them when I'm working out a lot.
Do you?
Because I can hear the music from the gym blaring, right? And I don't want to listen to old rock.
Yeah.
So I'll put on a subliminal, and I'll be working out, and ego strengthening, confidence.
Yeah. Is that something you record yourself, or is it?
No, I'm too lazy. I just go and find them online. That's
you're just playing it in the background, sort of as you're working out.
Yeah, it's on my phone. I just put it in, and I'm just like.
So what I like. You know what I like about you? You practice what you preach. I mean, you're doing what you're teaching and you're doing what you're saying every day, and that's cool. You're using it to your advantage, which is awesome. Here's an interesting one from my good old friend Dovra. When you compare Indians and Americans and Europeans, can you rate in order of the most hypnotizable? That's good.
Americans.
Would you say so?
Mm-hmm.
What makes you say that?
We'll fall for anything. That's part of it.
You know, there's some truth to that.
Yeah, and I guess the biggest difference is, like in India, there's much more reverence for family and structure.
Hmm.
You know, because I remember I was teaching something for the first time in India and also Malaysia, and I started to do a technique called reparenting. And I started with, hey, you know, our parents, as much as they tried, you know, hey, sometimes they screwed us up, right?
Yeah.
Now in America, and then I say, who here that one of your parents screwed you up somehow? Everybody's hand will go up.
Yeah.
Absolutely everybody.
True.
Some will go like this, right? You say that in Asia,
Yeah, that's true.
you know, no, my parents were perfect. You know, no, it's just so you have to adapt more. But I do know in Asia, authoritarian hypnosis works much better.
You know what I find interesting, like working on the ships, it's so multinational. There are people from all over the world taking a cruise, and as long as they can even remotely speak English, they all volunteer for the show, and you end up getting such a diverse audience. And it's absolutely right. You know, I always know that the Aussies are going to be larger than life and loud on stage and kind of, you know, into it. I always have a harder time with an English audience. They're a little bit more reserved and kind of, even though they're growing up with it, with you know, what's his name, Darren Brown, and the guy from the '90s. His name escapes me. What was it? Paul McKenna. Yeah, Paul McKenna. They kind of grew up on McKenna. It, but they're still very reserved. I noticed. And then Americans, generally speaking, you can kind of they'll do anything. You know, they will do anything on stage, and same with Canadians. You can sort of pretty much suggest whatever you want. And I can also narrow it down to certain parts of the country. I find the shows more successful in the South, you know, especially like in certain towns, they seem to go without a hitch, just because of the sort of mindset of, I guess, just, you know, like I'm thinking about, I did a bunch of shows in Louisiana, in and around the New Orleans area. Everybody was practically horizontal, you know, just relaxed and chilled and easy to hypnotize and kind of fun, you know. And sometimes it can be a little bit harder in, for example, New York City, you know, when the rat race is fully kicking in on people. So it's interesting. Lenice asked a question, any successes in patients with, and I'm going to probably pronounce this wrong, dysotomia /POTS, POTS. Are you familiar with that?
No.
No,
ask her what.
Dysotomia, DYSAUTONOMIA. I'm not sure what that is.
I'm not sure.
Lenice, if you can elaborate before we leave, we'll see if we know what that is. Dovra says he's from Chennai. It's 1 a.m. Oh, I thought the time frames were a bit kinder to everyone in India. Sorry about that. Dovra says, can we just approach people and perform rapid hypnosis? Yes. And
yes.
You can do it as fast as you want to do it. I mean, you can walk up to pretty much anyone that's willing and able and can understand you and actually has a want or a need, or, you know, wants to play alongside you. But what I noticed with that one is, obviously, if somebody's on their lunch break eating their lunch, that's not really the person to approach because they're eating their lunch. I see people like approaching people, you know, when they're on the phone and things like that. Not particularly a good subject either. So just pick people that just seem to be sitting there, you know, don't interrupt their life, as it were. And then, yeah, you pretty much can, as long as they're receptive, willing, able, want to, and all your language and, you know, things kick in, then, yeah, right? Pretty much anywhere and any time.
Yeah.
What is that?
I can hypnotize it. That's a macaw. We have a
funny.
macaw. Yeah. Sorry about that.
It sounds like a big screeching piece.
I had a hypnosis when I was first starting out. He'd say, you're firmly believing it when you can make the statement, I can hypnotize anyone, anywhere, anytime, for any reason, as long as they're willing to follow some simple instructions.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
And if they're not, then nope. Yeah.
Can't argue with that. Lanice says, okay, malfunction of the autonomic nervous system, pronounced dysautonomia. Dysautonomia. Can't say I've heard of that. Malfunction of the autonomic nervous system.
Autonomic.
Autonomic.
What does she mean by autonomic? Would that be like a nervous twitch?
No.
Would it be?
Yeah, Lanice. She says these are people with lots of dizziness, lightheaded.
Yeah, I think you could. I would be very nervous because there might be neurological issues going on or inner ear issues, and I'd stay away from. Personally, I'd stay away from it unless they've been medically checked out.
Yeah.
Because just like you and I know, pain control is wonderful with hypnosis, but you don't want to mask it.
Right.
Because then they think they're not hurt, and then they really get hurt.
I always say pain is pain. It's always there. It's just the emotional response to it. Pain's there for a reason. It's to tell you that you have an injury or you have something that needs some form of attention. And I think it shouldn't be masked, but how you emotionally can respond to it is the difference. So pain management is it can become easier when you're emotionally disconnected from that pain or distracted even, right?
Yeah. Well, and because you see people, you've done it, I've done it.
Yeah.
Women are better at it than men. I don't have time to be sick right now.
Yeah.
That. Or there's this cool research study where and you're starting to see it in how they judge when you come in, they quit and they're stopping using the term pain and they use the term discomfort. Mm-hmm. On a scale of 1 to 10, what's your discomfort level? Yeah. And what they found, just switching pain for discomfort cuts down how much pain medication someone needs.
Yeah. And Lanice says POTS is people have increase in heart rate upon standing.
I wouldn't mess with that.
It kind of ties in with the dizziness, doesn't it? Yeah, I would say a professional medical doctor is the way to go. I mean, hypnosis is more about thoughts and behaviors, belief systems, sort of mind, rather than something like that. It's almost like the other one I don't believe we should come into contact with too much is the schizophrenia. Is hypnosis really doesn't have much of an effect on that, or Parkinson's to a degree. Medical professionals for that one. And I agree with you that performance enhancement, body reduction, that kind of thing, habits, behaviors, hypnosis is perfect. It can really help. Well, we're coming to the end of our time. I know you're a busy man. We're about 6 minutes over. We started a bit late. Any last minute questions for Will? Now's the chance to put them in the chat box. Doverick, can we hypnotize people without telling them that they will not be that they will be hypnotized, but just that I will be doing a mentalism trick or something? The answer is yes, you can. Say whatever you want to. I do it all the time. I do things. I do stuff that is not hypnosis, but I have them believe that it is. And I do things that is hypnosis that I haven't believed that isn't. I mean, you can play with this. The beauty of this is you can really have fun with this as much as you want. I used to do, stealing watches and wallets and belts and things like that. I learned that from James Brown, the hypnotist over in the UK. But I would tell somebody, no matter how you focus in on your watch, I'm not going to steal it. And I'd wind up taking it because they'd lose focus because people can't focus. So they're trying to focus on their watch, and I'm tugging on their belt, thinking they're going to steal their belt, and I'll take their watch. It's just however you want to. It's however you want to play around with words. And he also says, "Can I just do a Udemy? Is that how you pronounce Udemy? Udemy course? I know it's an online thing. UDEMY. Is it Udemy course?
Well,
NLP.
Let me be honest. Totally honest.
Yes, please.
You get what you pay. You get what you pay for.
Yeah. And they're probably what, $5-6?
Yeah, and do you want your surgeon to go through a Udemy course for your next neurological exam?
Not really.
No.
Yeah, but I know. You know what? Here's what I would say. I mean, if you're over in India, for example, and you're only like, I don't know, Deborah, how old are you? 13, 12? I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But if it doesn't hurt just to like do one, but then obviously you're going to need professional training. I mean, it doesn't hurt to just like take a browse or a look. but then
Yeah,
get pro
and see
trained.
if you're interested, and if you're really interested, then keep training. Because I still take classes.
Now, here's
You
a
know.
perfect question for you. Sorry to interrupt, but it just ties in with what we're saying. Corey says, any recommendation where someone can get trained in NLP? Perfect. Talking to the right man here. I'm going to put you on full screen, Will, so we can see your T-shirt. Because
Yeah.
before that,
Someone.
you're on split screen. So
Yeah. So someone trained that trains for the National Federation of
there
Neurolinguistic
it is.
Programming, NFNLP, and we have trainers all over the world.
Nice.
Fastest growing market right now is India, China, and Malaysia, and they teach in native tongue and as well as English, of course, because one of the things the NFNLP group does is we use user-friendly, fast, fun NLP that you can use in the real world.
Nice.
We don't get bogged down in too much theory.
How much?
It's like
How much is that class?
Usually it runs well, when I teach it, it's $9.97.
Nice.
So I make it easy. It's like, and I do that because it didn't just save my life; it gave me a life worth living.
Mm-hmm.
And it's some cool information that you can use in business, not just as a hypnotist or a therapist or that, but probably half the people that take my training are salespeople.
Yeah.
So
when's the next class?
I don't have one scheduled till probably November, but I know they're scheduled all over. And because of wonderful Zoom, I have trainers teaching it all over.
Is it your organization?
Yes,
we got the big boss in the house right here.
Yeah, and mainly because there was really not many organizations back in the early '90s, and I cut the time down because it doesn't take long because you already communicate. I'm just teaching you how to focus your communication.
So let's do two things. When we get off this call, can you send me the link to your online training?
Sure.
And second of all, when you do have an in-person live training, where is it possibly going to be? What would it be, in Florida or somewhere else?
Florida.
Okay. And if you can send me those details, I'd love to do a follow-up. If you do schedule something together, that would be awesome. So I'm just going to finalize the comments, and then we got to get out of here. We have, by the way, Tom Nicoli next week. Hypnotist Tom Nicoli is coming in. I love Tom. Great hypnotist. Has his own personal journey. Been doing it for years. So he's next week. It's going to be next week at 2 o'clock Eastern time, right here. You have a link in the description if you are watching this on YouTube right now. You just click the link. You'll get a reminder, and you'll be able to see Tom and I chatting. We did have a couple of bloopers on this one, though, Will, because it was all like quickly getting online. I have little placeholders, and you were Richard and I was Will for about 25 minutes until I just like little names underneath our video titles or the opposite swapped around. So you were Richard for 20 minutes, which kind of upgraded. You got upgraded.
All right.
All right.
I can't do an English accent. I can do a bad Irish accent. I can't do English worth of shit, though.
Yeah, I can't do American either. Trust me, it's hard.
Well, that's a question. By the way, I always wonder, how come the English and the Aussie actors and even the Irish can do American? Most American actors can't do those accents.
Except for Brad Pitt. He does a really good English and an Irish. I mean, he's good. I can do American, but it's awful. It sounds like Hilly Billy Moonshine from Kentucky. It's bad. So I won't even do it to insult anybody here. It's just not good. Lenise says the autonomic issues are not life-threatening. They are life-altering. The goal would be to decrease sensitivity to symptoms. I would say...
we could do it.
Yeah.
I would personally want you to have a medical clearance. I'm pretty sure you would.
I would say you could chat to me or Will. You know what? Depending on where you are in the world, maybe just a quick chat and see. Because we're honest guys. If we can't do it, we will definitely tell you up front that we can't. And if we think we can help, then we'll let you know. But definitely, if you're under a doctor or medical supervision, I'd probably want to speak to whoever that is just to see exactly what's going on. Because I'm unfamiliar as well. Lenise says, "Are you familiar with DNRS, the rewiring of the limbic system?"
Is that like the eye movement thing?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
Well, what we always see happen is somebody learns something, they rename it,
Yeah.
and we may know what it is, but we don't know that
Just
name.
called something different. Yeah. Double
Yeah.
said he's 18. I'm sorry, my friend. You look like you look like a young lad. You look like 12, 13-year-old. 18. He's got like you can't see his picture, Will, but you will on the replay. Nice looking kid, or 18-year-old, should I say. Got a humongous camera like in front of his head, so it's hard to see him. But good. 18 is good. Lenise, Richard, I sent you an email last week about my issue. How can we continue conversation regarding efficiency of hypnosis? All right, I will find the email. It might have gone through Natalie. I'll get the email and follow up, or just shoot another one, and I'll get to it this afternoon. Jackie's leaving. Goodbye. Thank you for being late. I'm just kidding. Goodbye, Jackie. Any updates on Snap Out of It? That's a reality TV show that has been in the works for many years. The answer simply is no. With COVID, everything's locked down. Hollywood's locked down. Will's acting career's locked down. I'm locked down. Everything's ended, but everything's increased in my little puppy's life, Sandy. Everything's got better for her and sort of worse for everyone else. Sarah says, I'll be in Ireland from 26th to the 29th. Thank you for letting us know. That means you'll miss Tom Nikolai, I think. Deborah says, it's an old photograph of mine. Oh, you're one of those. It took it 5 years ago. You know, you get that on dating sites. You know, here's a picture of me. And by the way, the photos were 10 years old. Lenise says, check into dynamic neural retraining system created by Annie Hopper based on theory of brain neuroplasticity. Can't even say it. Plasticity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
I'm not familiar with it, but
no.
Yep.
But it sounds good. Deborah says took his pictures 5 years ago. Cheat. Jackie says lol. Okay. Lenise says at what address? incrediblehypnotist@gmail.com. All one word. incrediblehypnotist@gmail.com. Right. That's all the comment. Now they're all coming in. They're a bit sleepy to start with, Will, and then they all of a sudden they got cranking. And then all of a sudden we got like a never-ending supply of questions, which is awesome. These live streams are always fantastic. Will, I know you personally. I've seen you in Vegas a bunch of times. You have an extraordinary skill, my friend, and ability.
You too.
Keep doing what you're doing with helping people from all around the world. I personally would love to take your NLP class if you do a live one. I would love to come and take that and introduce my students to you that. Because I've got a lot of stage hypnotist students, but I'm sure a lot of them haven't learned, classic NLP, and it would be really beneficial. And you're out on a farm, aren't you, with horses and whatnot?
No, we keep our horses at a ranch, but yeah, it's right by my house.
Nice.
But yeah, maybe we could think about that in the future, and basic NLP with an emphasis for stage hypnotists.
There you go. Yeah, we could put something together. Skewed towards stagecraft and things like that, I'm sure.
Yeah, magicians, stage hypnotists. Yes. Yeah. Cool.
All right. Will, thank you so much, my friend, for your time. I totally appreciate it.
All right.
I'm going to switch it over and say thank you so much for all the viewers that came and viewed. Will, of course, is a diamond of information. Will, how do they find you online real quick? What's your website?
The two websites is nfnlp.com, nfnlp.com, or just drwillhorton.com.
Okay, so nfnlp.com is one. Mm-hmm. And what was the other one? drwillhorton.com?
Yeah, just drwillhorton.com.
Perfect. So make sure you catch up with the man. Next week at 2 o'clock, I'm excited to introduce you to my good friend Tom Nikolai. And after that, so that's going to be next week, but on the 28th, we have more of a travel blog featuring the nomads, the no state or the new state nomads. These guys have been living in an RV for like over a year and traveled all over the world. All over the North America in a motorhome. And I want to tap their brain about mindset, how they're living in a motorhome. Awesome story. And so it's diverting a little bit away from hypnosis, but it's not. And that's going to be 2 weeks from now. And other than that, thank you so much, Will. We're going to roll out of here. Thank you very much for everyone that took part. There was a lot of engagement, a lot of people watching. The replay will be up in about 5 minutes. And we'll talk to you soon. See ya. Thanks so much, Will. Take care, my brother.
Bye-bye.